Hey, this is Spencer from the Business Growth Podcast. And in this interview, I'm talking with Mike Hill. Now, Mike is the founder of the Internet Marketing Super Friends, and within the online marketing world, he is like the top go-to guy for paid marketing. And in this interview, we get into the details of running a successful paid campaign, but we're not getting into the actual tactics, but we're getting into like the psychology, the mindset, and the strategy. He's talking about the small differences. For example, a $200 campaign and a $2,000 campaign, there's very little difference. Maybe even between a $200 and a $20,000 campaign. There are pieces where Mike pauses and we get deep beyond things that he said in any other interview. So stay tuned. I want to welcome you guys to our podcast today, and we're lucky that I've actually got two superstars on with me. I've got Mike Hill and Kevin Davis, my business partner in the Business Growth Podcast. The reason why we got Mike is you are the go-to guy when a business wants to ramp up with paid traffic. And so many times we see businesses in the area of focusing on SEO or social media, and they want to get their timing right of injecting cash and really growing their business. So you are a go-to guy today, and Kevin Davis, we'll hear him jump in as well, and he will probably interject with some of the technical things and some of the other detailed pieces. So welcome, guys. And let's start off, Mike, and tell us a little bit more about what you're doing with helping businesses grow by paid traffic and other sources like that.
Sure. Let me just go back a little ways if I can, so we can understand the reason why I looked at paid traffic and the reason why each of these businesses that you're educating today should be looking at paid traffic as a source for ongoing customers and growth. When I first got started in internet marketing, or marketing on the internet, I shouldn't even call it internet marketing, it should be called marketing on the internet. About 14 years ago, I was selling ebooks. $67 ebooks for some of the guys who literally created that $67 ebook craze, and I hated it, man. It was really horrible. I didn't enjoy what I was doing. I didn't like the processes that I saw. I didn't like the consumer experiences. So I was about to quit. I was about 5 months into the internet, and I'm like, this ain't for me. I thought it was, but I think I'm wrong. I think this isn't for me. And then one of the guys said something to me that changed everything from that moment forward. He says, what if you didn't sell ebooks? What if you just bought and sold traffic? And I said, what the hell is traffic? And he said, well, internet users. You can actually buy ads and sell ads. Even if you don't have anything to sell, you can just make money off the buying and selling. Or you can choose to sell things and you can make money off of the buying, and then the selling is the product that you sell. So essentially, that simple phrase changed everything, and I started looking at how to buy and sell advertisements, and it eventually bloomed into me understanding consumer buying cycles and consumer buying psychology. And then once I had a couple of those things down, from playing with this buying traffic, I started going out and becoming a coach. I was a media buying business coach. Which usually ended up becoming, starting off as media buying and becoming conversion business coach. And I've been doing that for 12 years now. And what I do is I help businesses who are at usually anywhere from $100,000 a month in revenue to $1 million a month in revenue to expand even further. And then they pay me for either a day or on a monthly or weekly coaching call basis. And then I kind of guide them through the waters of creating a healthy business that can scale through paid traffic.
Okay, you mentioned the word scale. Why is the scale piece the item that you focus on in the conversion piece?
Well, two things. Anyone can buy traffic. I mean, anyone who's listening to this podcast can go out and spend some money on Google or Facebook tomorrow. The real key is on the conversion side of this is that unless you're converting that we call them cold. They're, traffic breaks down into cold and warm. Well, there's more, but for purposes today, we'll just stick with cold and warm. Cold traffic won't convert the same as warm traffic. So when you email your list, you may be getting a 5% conversion ratio and think you are the second coming of Jesus himself. But once you start adding cold traffic, all of a sudden people who don't already know, like, trust, and respect you, they're not going to buy your stuff because they don't already have an existing relationship with you. In that case, then you look at a much lower conversion ratio. So instead of spending $1 and making $1 back on Facebook, you may spend $1 and make 10 cents. So the conversion has to be the first part. Then, as an extrapolation of that, once you have the conversion and you're looking down the road, whatever, 2 weeks to 2 years, depending upon how much you drag your feet and don't focus, then you're ready to buy more traffic. The problem with scale after you have conversion is that unless you're truly ready for all of the new customers that you have coming through your pipeline, you can actually undermine your business and put yourself out of business by generating too much noise, if you will. And when you generate so much noise and you're not able to help control the volume of your customer and make sure that they're, if they're screaming praises, then all the noise in the world is fine. But if you're not prepared to scale, that volume of voice will not be praises talking about how amazing Spencer is. That volume will be, hey, what the hell's going on? I didn't get my email. Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So the scaling or the scalability of the business, even beyond the traffic buying itself, you have to have an infrastructure in place. And this is kind of boring for traffic conversation, but this is all the preceding stuff that we do before we look at driving massive amounts of traffic. In the beginning, we can drive a little bit and test the waters, if you will.
Okay, so you're testing the waters at the beginning. How does a person know when they're ready to start testing? I'm assuming things are gonna fall through the cracks, but accepting that that's gonna happen. How do you decide when you're gonna start it?
The direct answer that I have for that is if you're breathing, you're ready, and that's because there's never a wrong time to start paid traffic. Well, first, the only time you really shouldn't start paid traffic is if you can't answer customer service emails and if you can't deliver a product. Other than that, you can start testing paid traffic. The thing to consider is how much money can I spend on paid traffic comfortably and lose that money. So if you're not comfortable going into buying media and losing money, don't go into buying media, because all you will do is definitely lose money. The reason I say that is no one goes out and places a buy immediately and has a successful campaign from the first day. And even if they did have a success the first day, the second day will be a poor day. And if you don't have the media buying stamina to be able to stick with it, then that's the actual determining factor of whether or not you should start buying traffic, not what's the status of your business and if you have all of the upsells and all of everything else in place. It's more, do you have the well, I call it business stamina. Some people call it balls. It just depends on what you prefer. If you don't got the stamina to stay in the game, don't start playing the game, because you're going to lose money and you won't see things clearly.
Okay.
Other than that,
is it being attached to the outcome? People saying this has to work or else, that kind of thing.
Not really. I mean, here, and let me explain on that a little bit. I have had guys who've come to me who says, they say, this is my last chance. If this doesn't work, then I'm done. I'm out of business. And I've had that happen a number of times, because a guy gets on his last leg, he goes out and tries it, and things haven't worked for him. Usually, we'll get to the reason why they're not working later, but usually if they have that kind of last-ditch effort mentality, they're willing to do whatever it takes. It's the person who's not willing to do whatever it takes that is going to fail. That's the important thing. And if a guy has a specific set budget and says, look, this is my last $5,000 that I have to put towards this business, great. Put some of it towards paid media, but don't put $5,000 of it towards media day one. Maybe put $100 and see what kind of interest you have. I have a client that I'm working with right now that came to us and they said, well, what do we need to do? So I outlined a plan for a $20,000 media spend over the first 30 days. I stopped it after they spent, I think, $3,000. I didn't need to spend the other $17,000 to figure out that they had demand because the clicks I was able to get for cheap, and there was a plenty of them. And I was able to figure out that people would opt in because I was able to get the opt-ins for a nice low cost per email address submitted, but no one was buying. So there was some sort of a psychological disconnect between the opt-in and the conversion page. So I'm telling you all this because it's important to know that you don't have to spend 3 or 20. It can be fractional to your return. So if you have a program that you're only making $20 from, you don't need to spend $3,000 to figure out that you're not making 20. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. You use the word psychology, and I think that's a really important piece to it. So can we jump into the minds of running paid traffic and get into the real psychology of it? Because you use the phrase "whatever it takes," and that's an important phrase to look at, not from a desperation point. So let's touch on psychology, the mindset. You've been doing this long enough to understand how people think and to understand what it takes.
That's probably the most intelligent question I've been asked in any interview yet. And I say that because really understanding the mindset behind paid traffic and the individual who's buying paid traffic from a psychological perspective, I have had people who are smarter fail more often than those who you may not consider as intelligent. The guy who will just throw it up and see what happens, and he'll just look at the stats, and he's not. It's not a last-ditch effort for him traditionally. It's usually, this is my new life. This is how I'm going to make money for my family, and this is my business now. No matter what happens, I'm not ending this business. This is not a trial run at a secondary income. This is not a test. This is a guy who decides, this is my new way of living. That guy or girl will succeed far more than the person who's coming in who's got, a lot of times our intelligence will limit us from being successful because we'll come in and go, well, if that guy can do it, I can do it better. And then we start analyzing the data and the numbers. And then before we know it, we get in this paralysis mode where we're sitting here going, oh, well, we don't have this yet, or this isn't perfect yet, or that's not perfect yet. Let's not launch the campaign yet. Meanwhile, you've got something called burn rate. No matter what you're doing every single month, you're burning money. So if you've got a server expense, or you've got an Office Autopilot account, or an Infusionsoft account, or an email autoresponder, you're burning money every single month. There's only so much time you have before you run out of that money that you're burning every month without making money to put back. So traditionally, the psychology that I find that creates a successful media buyer, even if that media buyer is not the one who's physically buying the media themselves, they leverage OPE, which is other people's efforts from the Think and Grow Rich book. They leverage a lot of other people's efforts. They're happy to pay an expert 15 to 20% on top of what they would normally pay because they know that the expert would get better results than they would on their own. Do you follow me?
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't mean that you have to own and control everything. Usually the guy who's the most successful at buying traffic doesn't buy his own traffic. He lets somebody else do it for him. He or she, I say he a lot because the majority of people who come to me have been men. He will not necessarily be controlling, but he will be almost to the point of a workaholic, and they will be more apt to. They have kind of like they have a career mentality. That's really what it boils down to. They have a career mentality over an entrepreneurial mentality. So their media buying that they're going to be doing is part of the career that they have chosen for themselves. You guys follow me in all this?
I am. I'm actually writing it down. So by you saying career versus entrepreneur, are you talking tactical versus strategic, or longevity thinking, or what is it?
Yes. Yeah, it's a little bit of both, actually. So, like, here's the thing: an entrepreneur will have may look at the internet and may look at marketing on the internet and may say to themselves, hey, let's try this SEO thing today, or let's try this X thing today, let's try this whatever today, or let's make an ebook. I don't know if you know this, but a few of us have a little case of ADD. Some of us clinical. I know it's crazy to say. But I find that those who have the ability to really look at their business as a career for themselves and treat it like, you know what, I'm not going to go do a new Kindle book this week, or I'm not going to go do an SEO program this week. I'm going to look at this as a business, and I'm going to run this like my career is to run this business of my company. And it's not like I'm just going to try a new thing each time. And I find that with many entrepreneurs, we all have the ability to lose focus when we see, oh, maybe this will be the thing that saves my business. I don't consider that a career-based logic system. You know?
Mm-hmm. That sounds very Dan Sullivan-esque. Looking at it,
I love Dan Sullivan. Actually, I love him a lot. I use a lot of his focus time blocks in my business. Well, I try to use them frequently, and then I catch myself and I go, okay, we're back to the time blocks. Come on, guys. Come on. We're getting too distracted.
Yeah, we're human.
Yeah, exactly. We're human. But I really, really love Dan Sullivan. I've attended a number of his trainings. Him and his wife, Babs, are friends. I think they're fantastic people.
Okay. And the reason why I'm getting into, I really want to talk about the mindset and the psychology, the thinking, that growth process, because tactics change.
Yes.
Platforms change. 10 years ago, Facebook didn't exist. In 10 years from now, is Facebook going to be the power that it is? I don't know. They have a lot of incredible data. So I oftentimes hear business owners say, I really want to focus on free traffic. And whenever I hear the word free traffic, to me, and maybe it's bad thinking on my part, but it puts them in a box. It says, this is a business that's maybe doing up to $1 million a year. Maybe, if they're lucky. So how does that person expand and grow outside of the free and SEO and social to playing big time?
Okay, so there's two things. First, I want to address I want to focus on free traffic statement that I hear people make sometimes. When I hear that, what I hear is I haven't gotten to the point where I care enough about my business that I want to invest in it. Or I hear I have been brainwashed enough by the bullshit email campaigns that I see that tell me I can run my business off of free traffic. So either one of those two things, either A, the person isn't really serious about their business, and they don't necessarily, I don't know how to say this the correct way, and because I don't want to be insulting, but I want to make sure that I'm being realistic for you.
No, I think a person needs to hear it real. I mean, if you sugarcoat it, they're not going to grow.
Well, I think you're right. Every single guy who's come to me, I have had every single SEO guy that you have heard of come to me and ask me about how they're going to get into paid traffic. Because free traffic, there's no such thing. There is no such thing as free traffic. You are spending your time working on something. Your time has a value. How much do you establish? What have you established as your value per hour? I mean, you have a value per hour, Spencer. Kevin has a value per hour. I have a value per hour. I know what I've established for my value per hour for any time I work on something. And if it doesn't hit that mark, I shouldn't be working on it. So you have to ask yourself, what's your value per hour? Not just from a career perspective, like when you go to your day job, if you're working a job and you're doing the internet, trying to start this new internet career, not what somebody else is paying you. What would you pay yourself? And anybody who works on free traffic knows if you're going to invest your time into that free traffic, it's going to cost you something. Here's what I do. If I'm going to go out and spend time, I can go out and spend less time spending $20 on, for now, Facebook traffic. Well, since you mentioned Facebook, I can go out and spend $20 on Facebook traffic. I can spend an hour doing that. And then I can get a return probably of $50 or $100. To me, that's a good return on investment. I'm going to double my money. And the difference between spending $200 and $2,000 is really not that much. It takes about the same hour, maybe two. And now you've got a duplicate return. Instead of making $40 or $20 return on your investment of your hour of time, now you're making $2,000 return on investment of your hour of time. Because it really doesn't take that much once you get things moving, especially with the advancements in technology now between Facebook and Google and Bing. You don't have to really sit there and handhold the campaigns like you used to 10 years ago. We used to have to literally handhold campaigns. You don't have to do that now. So Did I answer your question appropriately?
Yeah, I think so. You touched on something that that triggered a previous comment that you had about scaling, and so you said the difference between spending $200 or $2,000.
Right.
It goes back, and it made my mind think of Tim Ferriss's book, and from the venture capital world, is it's easier to raise $1 million than it's raised $100,000.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so let's go into the scaling. A business has put a little bit of money in. They've tested. They've validated. They're able to, most importantly, take care of their customers. So,
Right.
The holes aren't emptying out. They're not having a bad experience.
Right.
At that point, it's a psychology of ramping up.
Right.
So how does a person overcome that psychology, and what is that process like?
Okay, so the barrier that takes place in our minds as we go to scale our business is a unique conversation. And I'm glad that you're having these conversations, because they're not conversations that anyone ever has with their audience. So you guys who are watching this, if you're tuning into Spencer's show here, I mean, this is really, really rare. Most people just want to go, well, how do I get into the media buying? And then just cut to the how do I exactly buy. That's a huge mistake, and that's why everyone fails at media buying. I mean, really, what I do is not that complicated, and people think I'm some crazy genius. I'm not. I just have media buying stamina. So the question is, how does someone flick that switch in their head to go from small business to big business? Mm-hmm. The real answer here is, what are you afraid of? Most business owners that I find who want to go from small to big, they want to, but there's also something else holding them back from going into the big. So what you should do is write down a hit list of what are the 5 things that you're afraid of that are going to happen when you get to scale. And you do that from a business life perspective and a personal life perspective, both of them, because you will self-sabotage yourself once you start buying traffic if you don't have your head in the game. And and seriously, you're the first person who's ever asked that question. And I see it all the time. And I tell my clients, now I vet my clients. I had a guy who was going to come out. He was going to pay me $25K for a single day consultation. He had already wired the money. He was due to show up in a couple days. We got on the phone, and I'm talking with this guy. This is an important story for you guys, by the way. I'm talking with this guy, and he says to me, I said, well, we got to do this. We have to work on that. We have to work on this. And he starts telling me, well, we did this because of that, and we did this because of this, and we did this because of X. Those are called self-justifications. He was justifying all of his previous actions rather than listening to the information that he needed to move forward in his business. So if you find yourself self-justifying all of the actions you made up to this point, you're not ready. You need to get to the point where you don't look at why you've done what you've done up to this point and make excuses for where you're at. Nobody cares how you got to where you are. The only thing we care about is how are you going to be able to move to the next level, and is your mind ready for you to move to the next level? I told that guy, I sent him a text message, and I said, hey, you're not ready. I'm sending you your money back, and you're not welcome to come out. He freaked out, called a couple of friends, mutual friends, and said, hey, can you get me back in with Mike? And his friend called and literally, was pretty much just begging, hey, man, can you please, you got to help my friend, and da-da-da-da. So against my better judgment, I said, okay, but know that it's going to be this, and know that you're going to have this. The guy got 6 months through an engagement, 98% done, and abandoned the project. He wasn't ready. And this is after spending about $100,000. Do you see what I'm getting at? Mm-hmm. This is a guy with a successful business already. He knows these things. He's a hyper intelligent, super market. Well, I wouldn't say super marketer. He's a super, super brain. Really smart. But he wasn't ready. You got to be ready. You got to be ready to move into what you need instead of focusing on what you've had to do. So that's the biggest switch I can say. The easiest way to do this, do the list of 5 things, see if there's anything stopping you, and then ask yourself, once I'm successful at this and I'm spending $1 million a month and I'm making $2 million a month, what is my life going to look like? What is my business going to look like? And does that achieve for me what I want? What are my personal goals for myself and my business?
Okay, so you've got this hit list of 5 things.
Right.
And sure, it may be 5, it may be 20, who knows? Right. How many of those things are real? And the reason why I ask that is because if a person can go through the psychological steps before they meet with you or before they're really growing their business, then they're that much further ahead. They're not. I've grown a business and self-sabotaged many times.
Yeah, me too.
And it sucks, man. And then looking back, I can realize, but during the process, I couldn't. And so I want to help our listeners get through that right now. And so how much of the fears that they have usually come to pass? Like, what is it?
So here's the thing about fear. Once you see it for what it is, and once you're willing to accept it, then you can move past it. So from those 5 or 20 things that these people will write down, if they write them down, I guarantee you probably the majority of people will actually have a real conversation with themselves when they write them down. But at some level, they won't accept it internally. Once you accept that these things actually matter to you, and you really, I did a talk at Magic Bullet a number of years ago, a conference in New Shopwood, and I called it My Last 30, and I made everyone go through and write down what they would do if they were on their deathbed. What would be the things that they would write down if they had 30 days? They were given 30 days to go and do what they wanted to do. And that exercise helped a lot of people in that room to realize they weren't doing what they wanted to do. So if you're going to go into buying media, of course you're going to self-sabotage it, because you're starting and growing a business that you don't have the heart for. And that is where failure comes into play. Do you get it?
Mm-hmm. Okay. I want to ask you a personal question.
Yeah.
Your last 30, you moved from sunny, warm California up to the cold Arctic North, we'll call it. And besides that, you're now putting yourself involved with like a local movie theater and local businesses, and you really care. Why did you make the transition?
It's a good question. So I have done a lot of things in my life. I've had periods where I've made a lot of money and periods where I've filed bankruptcy. I mean, we're entrepreneurs. We live on that edge of comfort where most people don't live. Once we embrace that fear, nothing really matters anymore. If you lost it all tomorrow, who cares? You can go back and start it again another day. It's not, and the thrill of the chase is a lot of it. It got to the point in my life where I said, I did my own last 30 for me. And I said, what do you want for your life? And I said to myself, I want to take my little girl to school every day. I want to pick her up from school every day. I want to enjoy life with her. I want to enrich the lives of others around me. And I don't care how much money I make, because money doesn't matter. You don't realize that, unfortunately. A lot of us won't realize that until we've made enough that it doesn't really matter anymore. And then you realize that when you didn't have any, it didn't matter. When you have a lot, it still didn't matter. So I went around and I created the lifestyle that I wanted here in Montana, which I'm in a town with a population of 2,000 people. Everybody knows each other. They all, I literally wave at probably 40% of the cars. And that's because probably 20% just are thinking in their heads. I know pretty much everybody I drive by. And I wanted a life instead of a business. So, everything I'm telling you obviously comes from my own internal projections of myself and my view of the world. We all have that in us. And I see that same thing reflected in a lot of the clients that have come out. So now what I do is I run a small boutique agency. I've got 5 employees instead of what I had before in California, too many. I, on occasion, will take a client who wants to come out and hang out with me at my house, and we'll do a good business planning session. And I've really created a business that feeds my lifestyle, and instead of a business that is my lifestyle.
Okay. How did you get to that point? Because there's definitely a growth cycle where you're starting it.
Yes.
And some people, I think there's 2 ways to look at it. One of my favorite writers, his name is James Altucher. He talks about going for themes instead of goals. And so the theme you have is, picking your daughter up at school, dropping her off, and living a life of knowing people. And how do you go from growing this enormous business to getting the ideal lifestyle? And how can any business owner get something like that?
Oh, you know what? You are really good at this stuff, Spencer.
Well, I think about the mind stuff, the tactical fleets, man, and so
yeah, this is Yeah, you and Joe Polish, really, really great interview style. All right, so the answer to that question is, you know, it's to become guilt free. That's the answer. So, as a business owner, and you have all of these people who are hanging on you, and you have this noise-making machine that exists, and it's just sitting there cranking out whatever. Usually, it's not making you personally. If you have the machine that's big already, because we said about bigger, and then we're not talking small to big now. We're talking big to purpose. Um, Usually it's making so much noise that you're deaf. You can't hear your own kids talking to you. And you're going through the motions and making less money than you've usually ever made before. Most of the most successful businessmen I know actually make less money personally um, running their noise making machines than they did when they were just a single guy working out of a shop or out of a home office. Um, and they have all of these employees who count on them, and that guilt that you have towards, what if I close this all? What would all of these people do? Um, well, at least that was what it was for me. That guilt of, how do I let everybody down, um, was enormous. It was a huge sandbag on my shoulders, and I see the sandbags on other business owners' shoulders, and I tell them, they'll all be okay. If you let everybody go and you started running a business of purpose that means something to you, everyone will find their own way. And guess what? All the right people will become attracted to you now, and you'll be doing things that you enjoy doing. Like for me, I decided when I moved here that I was going to start a group called the Internet Marketing Super Friends. No one believed me that you should not try and have a membership site on your own website, that you could have a membership community in a Facebook group. They're like, no, we have to put them on our site. We don't want it on Facebook. I'm like, screw you guys. I'm doing it then. And I'm going to do it the way I want. I'm going to kick out a bunch of naggy, whiny people who complain about everything. I'm going to have rules that make it positive, and I want giving to be above everything else. And now the group's 5,000 strong, plus almost 6,000. There's 10,000 people waiting to get in the group. When you build something for a passion that you truly have, you will attract everybody else around you. And all the other crap that I was doing before I moved here, it's all gone. And I'm glad it's gone, because it wasn't part of me. And now I get to run the life I want.
Okay. By the way, the Internet Marketing Super Friends is an incredible group. And I want to give props to Kevin as well for moderating in there. The value and the the word ecosystem, they use that in startup communities. The ecosystem there is, you don't feel icky when you get inside. You feel like you've got a group of peers that really help you out. So I wrote down a keyword when you were talking, how some guys will run a big shop and they get deaf to the noise. And the word that I wrote down was ego. And it seems to me that you, at some point, faced ego and said, okay, look, like, we're no longer friends. We're parting ways.
Well, yes and no. For me, it was a little different. But I do understand what you're saying, and that it does happen a lot. For me, I don't think I still struggle with non-ego. Like, here's a perfect example. I produced a course 6 years ago. And I did it because everyone was yelling at me to do it. And everybody in my office was telling me, go make a course, go make a course. I still, to this day, struggle with, who the hell wants to listen to me? I'm just some dumbass who lives in Eureka, Montana now, pulls a trailer around every once in a while, says something smart in a business meeting. I don't really think I have that. I mean, I know I have value, but I still struggle with, do I actually have enough value? I think I have what Valerie calls imposter syndrome, where I don't really have, I think if I had more ego, I'd probably be way more successful than I am monetarily. But I do see that a lot of people will do something for, a lot of business owners will do something for ego. And I think that gets replaced with passion for life purpose instead. I think for me particularly, it was guilt over ego. And it's usually one of the two. Like my guilt for closing everything, how would everyone else operate without my direct involvement, versus, am I doing this for, egocentric reasons? It was very difficult for me to close my shop and fire everyone. Very, very difficult. Um, and it wasn't from an egocentric perspective because I moved away first before I even closed it. Um, it was just I felt bad for everybody that I was employing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I can see
But
that.
the ego thing does exist for sure, and I see it an awful lot. But I've done a tremendous amount of studying, under, Carl Jung and Wayne Dyer, not under them, but looking at all of these different great self-awareness teachers, and I think a good balance and a good self-awareness is what's required for a healthy marketing campaign.
This has been good. This has been really good. I honestly and truthfully, I was a little intimidated to have our conversation today because I've seen the way that you interact and the kind of a teacher and consultant you are. And I even told Kevin. Kevin's like, dude, don't worry about it. And the tipping point was this, and this is being honest. And I think most of, at least for me, a lot of my good ideas come in the bathroom.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And so I was in the bathroom this morning, and I was thinking, okay, I'm going to have this call with Mike. And it clicked, and I started thinking about Michael Jordan. And I go, that guy was cut from the high school basketball team. And so if I was having a conversation with the Michael Jordan of high school, it wouldn't be any ego. I wouldn't be intimidated. And so I thought, I'm going to have the conversation with Mike Hill, the dude that started out and that loves what he's doing, instead of the Mike Hill, like the guy that started internet marketing Super Friends or other things like that.
Well, that's awesome, man. But here's the thing, too, and I tell everybody this that I come across. And I go through and I do this. You'd appreciate this. I don't want to bore your audience too much, but I go through and do a bunch of psychology training with one of my clients, and we talk about giving your power. Ooh, I'm getting goosebumps. You guys who are listening to Spencer here, you don't realize, maybe you do realize, what an incredible guide you have here with Spencer in these podcasts. If you're able to pull this kind of nuggets out, man, this is incredible guidance. Don't give your power to anyone. When you put anyone else above you, you give them your power. So, and I'm not meaning to say this to say anything negative towards you at all, Spencer, but I'm not above you, man. Dude, I'm seriously, we're at the same level. Each of us has different levels of experience. I'm at the same level as anybody else. I don't deserve your power. I don't deserve anyone else's power, and no one else deserves my power. What we should be doing is looking at ourselves as the definitive, ourselves and, of course, God, that's the material connection. There should be no one else that you give your power to. I don't mean this to sound bad to anybody. I don't really look up to anybody in the internet marketing community. And I think that in that way, I have been able to be accepted by that community as a peer because I consider myself a peer. I don't look at, like Frank. I don't look at Frank and think, man, that guy's way above my level. No, he's at a different place. We're at different points on the same level, and you're at a different point on the same level. There's conversations you can have that you would blow Frank Kern's knowledge base out of the water. The same with Kevin. Each of us is in different points. So that in and of itself is a key to successful media buying, knowing no one else is better than you. No one else knows. They may know different things than you, but with a little bit of searching, you can know just as much as them. You have the power to make it happen.
That is good. So I'll wrap up with a couple things. If people are looking to do media buying and grow their businesses, it's in their head. It's psychology. Totally. And so to be able to either get over the blocks that you have, you'll either self-sabotage, you'll grow and then you'll self-sabotage, or you could take the time to face those fears, write them down, emotionally understand and accept. And that's through the hit list. And then once you've decided that we're going to move forward with this, you have to have the mindset of whatever it takes.
Right.
And then once you have whatever it takes, what I think is instead of having to tactically and technically learn all the pieces, find the right people to help you go through that process. Sure, you can test, but if you really want to scale, you find the right people.
Right.
And then you put them on your team, and then realize that as you grow, you're going to face two things. You're either going to face some guilt or ego. And if you can learn how to, how do I say this? run your business with love. And I know that sounds really weird, but like really care about your customers, care about the experience, care about the process, like love, like treat each transaction as the most important thing, then it will grow and you'll make it through that. Is that a decent summary?
Perfect. I'll give you one more analogy that I've used a number of times that I think really hits the point home. If you have a kid, your business is your child. If you have this, you won't let your child ever fail. There's no way you can let them. I mean, if they fall down, you get them back up and you keep walking with them. It never enters your mind that you're not going to help your child learn how to walk. It never enters your mind that you should stop doing that. That's the same type of dedication that you have to have to your business. And if you can't say that, then you're doing the wrong thing. Find the right thing, and then you can go out and buy media for it like crazy, or have someone else help you. And one last thing I would say is educate up. If you have a child who has autism, as another example, you're not going to say, oh, you know what? We better just get rid of that one. Let's just make another one. This one has autism. No, you're going to go out and get educated, aren't you? You're going to go out and figure out exactly what you need to do to take care of this child with autism. Some of your businesses are children with autism. You may have to really realize that you need to educate yourself so that you can go out there and take care of that child. You're not just going to ditch it if it's something you're passionate about, obviously.
Yeah.
If it's not, and you're not passionate about it, then you would have the luxury of being able to close it, move on to something else. But treat your business the way you would treat your child. If it's having problems, go get educated so that you can understand exactly what you need to do to take it to the next level of its life.
Well said. Well said. I think one of the education pieces, we'll put a link in here, would be joining the Internet Marketing Super Friends. And understand there is a level of standard when you do join there. There's a code of conduct. And if you're a listener to our podcast, more than likely you follow that level of conduct. But, find out what it is and adhere by it. Mike, how do our listeners say thank you? Because this was a great podcast.
The best way to say thank you is to, and I don't want this to sound totally just lame, but, if you've ever seen the movie Pay It Forward, that's all we can do, man. I mean, literally, you just pay it forward to the next person. Do something that is great for somebody else. I mean, if the more we all help each other instead of tearing each other down, the more we pass on this abundance mentality and truly believe it, the more everyone will have an amazing life and we can all enjoy ourselves. So just do something great for somebody.
Okay. Good interview.